or morning, depending where you are. Just let's wait a couple of more minutes so we have more people joining, and then we will start. I just bear some patience for a few minutes. Thank you. Okay.
Well, otherwise we can.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just waiting one more minute and then I will start. Okay, let me now first begin my sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Is it working? Let me just run it. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. This is the third session of the UN Interagency Works in 6 webinar on capacity building in STA for SDGs. My name is Ludovico Alcorta. I am a professorial fellow on innovation, technology, and technology for sustainable development at the United Nations University Merit in Maastricht, the Netherlands. Just by way of introduction, you might have heard it yesterday if you were present yesterday. The Working Stream 6 as part of the United Nations Interagency Task Team, which was formed in 2017, where the Interagency Task Team is a UN special group task force formed by a number of specialized agencies with SDI mandates and regional commissions. This includes UNCTAD, UNESCO, UNIDO, UNEP, UNUMERIT, WIPO, UNESCO, and in terms of regional commissions, UNESCO, UNESE, ECLAC, Economic Commission for Africa, Economic Commission for South Asia. And we also are working together with the European Commission Joint Research Center. These are just some of the agencies that are involved in the UN-IATT. Our purpose is to design and deliver joint training courses, workshops, and training materials on SDI policy for SDGs, particularly in developing countries. We've had already about 5 or 6 webinars in different parts of the world, and we are trying to develop constantly new material and new ideas to provide to our stakeholders. If you would like to have more information about our United Nations Interagency Task Team on Science and Technology for SDGs, please visit our webpage, which you can see on screen. Today we will have session 3, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. In session 1, we discussed a bit of the framework for SDI for SDGs. We address issues of science and technology and how do you plan the policy cycle in relation to SDI for SDGs. The second session yesterday focused on the policy instruments themselves. In the first part of the session, we discussed the overall view on policy instruments, what is a policy instrument, which are these policy instruments, and how do you use them. And then we move into, in the second part, to look some experiences of application of SDI instruments. The first part of it focused on the policy mix. How do you combine a set of instruments for achieving objectives? And in the second part, we zoom into specific instruments in the region, in the Latin American region. Today, we will go even more deeper into a set of instruments related to innovation and entrepreneurship. We will start with an overview and I can move to my next presentation. After this introduction, we'll have some Mentimeter questions, and the substantive sessions will start with an overview of the conceptual issues on innovative entrepreneurship. Then, in the second part of the webinar, we'll have a discussion of some regional experiences that are going to present both in developed and in developing. We hope to have an extensive discussion after that. And to be a bit creative, we're changing a bit the format today of the webinar. We're going to introduce some exercises on innovative entrepreneurships and enabling policies. Some of you have submitted to us some answers to some questions, and on that basis, we're going to have an exercise. Hope at the end of the session, we'll have some takeaway messages and a final Mentimeter question. We have a fantastic team today with us. You have, on behalf of UNIDO, two colleagues, Fernando Santiago. Fernando Santiago is an industrial policy officer at UNIDO, where he specializes in research and policy advisory service on industrial policy for member states. He is the UNIDO focal point at the Interagency Task Team and a member of the scientific board of the Latin American Network for the Study of Learning Systems, Innovation, and Competency Building, LALEX. We also have from UNIDO, Marco Camilla. Marco Camilla is an economist. He's the chief of UNIDO's Innovation and Digitalization Division. He has published on innovation, entrepreneurship, and urban economy. Previously, he was the chief of the urban economy and finance branch at UN-IATT in Kenya, and has been with the Inter-American Development Bank and Latin American Bank in Venezuela. Also, we have with us this afternoon, Nicolo Giglo. Nicolo is a professional with more than 20 years experience in design and implementation of productive and business development policies, including investment attraction, export promotion, and innovation. He joined CEPAL, the Economic Commission for Latin America, in 2015 as an economic affairs officer on innovation and new technologies unit. He's an engineer and has master's degrees both in the University of Chile and in the MIT in the US. And finally, we have Dimo Kalowski, who's a staff economist at UNTAD. He's been working on the field of innovation policy since 2009 and has been the principal officer and contributing author to UNTAD's Science, Technology, Innovation Policy Reviews on Oman, Rwanda, and Uganda, working currently on a SDI for Zambia. We also have as a background support, Sengmei Wang and Despona Susoni from UNESCO, who are helping us with all the Mentimeter questions and the technical aspect of this webinar. So let's move on to the some technical guidelines for the Zoom meetings. Have you been before with us? You've already tried this, but we will it's still important that I mention this again. Please, during the presentations, keep your microphone and camera off when you're not, only switch them on when you're speaking. To take the floor, please click reaction and then raise your hand. And when you're talking, you can unmute yourself when the floor is actually given to you. Please, please, please use the chat constantly for asking questions and sharing comments. Share your experiences, share where you come from, share your thoughts, ask questions, say what you think, because we need that feedback information so we can build a discussion. Please understand that we try to make this webinar as participative and as possible. So we need that you get involved as much as you can. For those that would like French to have the webinar in French and Portuguese, we have interpretation available. Please look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a button that can be used for translation. Okay. Also, some technical guides for the Mentimeter. During the session, we will ask some questions and we'll invite you to participate in Mentimeter questions. How to participate in these quizzes or questions. We will send you, whenever we start a question, we will send you a link through the chat. Okay, in every step, please just open the chat and you'll find a link. Click on the link and you will be taken to the question itself and the answers, and you just click on the answers there. Perhaps the best way to start this and to try this is to start with the Mentimeter questions begin with our first question. The Mentimeter question is already in the chat. Please click on it. The question relates to yeah. Please clarify the country where your institution is located. This is just a warm-up question, just to know where you're coming from, which countries you're coming from, and to practice with the Mentimeter. Those of you that have been here the first 2 days know how to use it, but not everybody has been here in the first 2 days. So please go into the chat, click on the answer to question 1, and just type the country where you are located, where institution is located. We can see we have Namibia, Mauritius, Austria, Botswana, Senegal. The countries with a bigger font tend to be the ones that are repeated most. Some of you are replying on the chat. That's useful information for us, but it would be much better if you actually click on the question and reply on the Mentimeter window itself, because we can then record it in the presentation. Here, the link has been reposted, so you can. Yeah, we have 16% answers. We would love if we could have some more. Okay. Right. Perhaps we can now move to the to the next question. Okay, this question relates to the sessions that we're going to have in a minute. And they ask you, which are the 2 main drivers of innovative entrepreneurship for you or in the countries that you're working for? What are the main drivers of innovative entrepreneurship? Again, go to the chat. The link is already posted there. Press on the link and you will see all these answers. It's a necessity, market opportunity, technological opportunity as the main drivers. And click on the 2 main drivers of innovative entrepreneurship in the countries you work for. Again, the Mentimeter question link has already been posted. Thank you. Some answers are coming in. Market opportunity and availability of finance have seem to be availability of finance seems to be a very important driver. Market opportunity. Now we have more respondents. Yeah, finance and market opportunity both seem to lead in the pack. Technological opportunities also, but market opportunities now the top one. Please go to the chat and click on the Mentimeter question so you can see market opportunities seem to be the leading one, and finance is not so important now. Even technological opportunities have taken the lead now. Interesting. Normally, when we have these questions, availability of finance becomes one of the leading driver of innovative entrepreneurship, but in this case, with the answers we're getting from you, seem to be market opportunities that arise for businesses in that main driver of innovative entrepreneurship. Well, with that, having said that, now I will move on. And please keep these questions in mind, these answers in mind, these drivers, because the next hour and a half, we will be going around them. We'll be thinking and elaborating on these drivers. So on that note, I will now move to the first presentation of today by Fernando Santiago from UNIDO, who is going to give us an overview of the conceptual issues on innovative entrepreneurship. Fernando, the floor is yours, and you can now share your screen.
Thank you, Ludovico, and thank you for the participants to be back with us. Can you see the presentation now, Ludovico?
Yes, it's going fine.
Good afternoon again. Thank you. And well, today it's more on the sort of application of some of the tools that have been seen in this course, right? So in this case, we want to talk about innovative entrepreneurship. And one of the ideas of the questions that we just posted was to really start setting you thinking on the issue. Let me see, I don't think this thing is moving. So the idea here is, is to give you a sense of these two activities, innovation and entrepreneurship, tend to be mutually reinforcing. So these two activities, usually understood separately, they're really mutually reinforcing. Entrepreneurs are fundamental for innovation because through their entrepreneurial capacity, they can transfer knowledge as part of the commercialization process, right? So they can create new business, new opportunities, new products, and transfer that to the market. Innovation is a determinant factor of entrepreneurship because it allows creative solutions to meet the demand in the market or to address a problem and to transform it into a business opportunity. Usually, when you have entrepreneurship, the solution involves technology, but not necessarily, right? Entrepreneurship contributes to job creation and a certain level of income. But not all entrepreneurship is characterized for being innovative, right? So not everything has to be innovative entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs can arise out of necessity, as you mentioned earlier, necessity due to the impossibility of finding a stable job or a well-paid job. And these are activities that are mostly focused on low-skill commercial activities or services with limited potential for growth or profits, right? And if often this really is to meet a personal need or family need, right? Entrepreneurship can be associated with identification of business opportunities, as you mentioned there, the market opportunity. What is special, and I think that some of you were really right, is this the type of proposition is satisfies a need in the market, but the need also involves generation of technological dynamics or a different kind of dynamics, different from what exists before. Earlier said mobilizing knowledge. And then, of course, this idea of entrepreneurship combined with innovation is what we're really interested in this session. Innovative entrepreneurship distinguishes from other forms of entrepreneurship because it is motivated by opportunity, but also because it emphasizes novel products, services, production methods or business models. And such innovations, in a way, increases the livelihood of a firm to grow or for creating wealth, for addition of value-added jobs, as well as produce economic and social benefits. And this can be at the local, national, or regional, or even international level, right? So many of you have heard about the unicorns and these ideas, companies that transcend the national level, go to international. The main differences between traditional entrepreneurship and innovative entrepreneurs is that these are special types of individuals that look for opportunities. So this individual opportunity nexus, these opportunities are driven by research and application of knowledge or technology. Academic training can be an important background of these entrepreneurs, but also the ecosystem is very important. So the conditions in which these entrepreneurs are going to work through networks, through access to technology, knowledge, qualified labor, financial and support institutions are very important for these entities to thrive, right? Entrepreneurship is important in the context of the UN, and particularly in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. These are, since 2012 at least, various resolutions at the level of the UN General Assembly have been passed in relation to entrepreneurship, and these recognize the importance of entrepreneurship's activities to solve challenges in economic, social, and environmental matters, including issues around poverty, employment, and even migration. Right? And the particular cases, I mean, I just highlighting 3 of the SDGs. In this case, for example, you can see in the case of SDGs 4 and 8, these are 2 dimensions that include, targets that intervene in entrepreneurship. But in practice, business activities generally cover more than one SDG, right? This highlights the importance of institutional factors that influence entrepreneurial talent and socio-economic growth. And SDG 9, for example, which is important for innovation, it's a relevant dimension. No? Science, technology, innovation become very explicit in the SDG 9. So in the context of SDGs, innovative entrepreneurship considers a balance between economic, social, and environmental objectives. Business, in addition to creating employment and income, contribute to solving development problems. Right? In this case, for example, we can consider social enterprises, but it's not the only case. And the idea is that these business entrepreneurs, innovative entrepreneurs, have a transformational power. Right? They can empower the diverse actors as the basis for economic development. They can drive poverty alleviation and other forms of generating social value, right? There is a sense of directionality that Clovis mentioned earlier, and some of colleagues also, the directionality. Entrepreneurship, innovative entrepreneurship in particular, needs to sort of target very clearly what kind of activities need to be solved, the problems to be solved, and how to mobilize STI to address those challenges. And there's a diversity of activities in terms of, process of searching for opportunities and business, but also based on mobilization of knowledge and replication market principles. But also consider the potential for social value to be created by communities and society and groups in society, different groups in society. And here is important now, the question that we had at the beginning, when you identify some of the, if you have some of the drivers, you can identify also some of the needs, some of the barriers that these entrepreneurs face. And of course, many people tend to look at finance, but also you see the access to technology, access to knowledge, qualified labor, and other conditions in the environment are also going to be important as a determinant of whether these entrepreneurs are able to operate or not, the constraints that they face. And when you face these constraints, of course, then what we basically talk about is the opportunity for market, for policy to intervene. Right? So there is an intention to address some of these challenges in a sort of through a policy intervention. So we are not going to review all the different facets of innovation or policies that can require or are targeting. And we have just to mention some of those. As I mentioned, innovative entrepreneurs need the supportive ecosystems, and governments and development agencies can support the creation of this. Okay, I'm going to be slower. Okay, to create some of the conditions for the entrepreneurs to operate in the environment, right? You can do that by introducing financial support. Some of them, promoting capital markets through raised capital, security markets, so that entrepreneurs have access to financial support that is attuned to their needs, right? You also see now the emergence of new novel mechanisms of financing through the use of digital technologies, right? So in itself, the use of digital technologies allows innovation in the markets that are empowering entrepreneurs. You can also see some policies targeting human capital development through tax incentives, business incubators, technology compensation, grants, right? Articulation between supply and demand. So you can have an entrepreneur, but the risk is high. So the way to compensate is by, for example, creating opportunities for them to get market access or through procurement, for example. Right? It's very important to have institutions that protect or that set the market dynamics for entrepreneurs, right? So sort of the rule of the game. These efficient institutions provide some kind of freedom to market participants and guarantee the conditions and opportunities for SMEs or for entrepreneurs to really enter and compete in the market. Some policies can address structural market issues, right? For example, high transaction cost or infrastructure, right? And so there are different tools, and then I'm sure that you in your different countries and in your different areas of work, you might have some examples. Maybe you can share with us some of the experiences that you have had in the use of some of these instruments. So maybe there are others that you have and that we have not considered in this this slide on this presentation, right? So these are sort of ideas, no? Intelligent appropriate right, for example, is a very important factor that can encourage or disencourage entrepreneurship, and that also some activities that need to be around those barriers or drivers, right? Let me just, before we close, just the last two slides. How much time do I have, Rodrigo? More or less.
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Let me just quickly, this is a case that, you know, when in the production of our industrial development report in 2020, we were exploring some opportunities, how these digital technologies being mobilized to support small, medium size enterprises, right? And we found very interesting, you know, the case of the Basque Country. It's a region, no? It's a region in Spain, very dynamic, with a very high degree of specialization in steel, shipbuilding, machinery. In the last 40 years, the economy has been transforming itself very rapidly through clusters policies, a very strong commitment to technology and innovation. And then, of course, as Monica presented yesterday, the Basque Country also has a smart specialization strategy, right? And one of the areas that is important in the strategy refers to advanced manufacturing. In this case, in particular, to support adoption of what we call the Industry 4.0 technologies, to support the local companies. This tends to be local, big, large companies, but also some of them, you know, connected to small and medium enterprises. Within that strategy, right? There's two very clear objectives: support digitalization and support internationalization of the companies. One of the instruments, right? And then, of course, I mean, let me just draw your attention to this question here: how to make sure the SMEs in the Basque Country incorporate high technology.
1 minute, Fernando.
Sorry?
1 minute, just
yeah,
wrap up,
so
please.
Just to give you a sense that, you know, they created this BIND 4.0 program, which is an accelerator. Many of you would have accelerators or have seen accelerators in your countries, created in 2016. And this is the idea to create some support for the startups in areas like advanced manufacturing, energy, health, and food technologies. It's a public-private initiative that, you know, creates or seeks to create a balance between economic and social environment objectives, but also takes some, you know, very clear ideas around, for example, eco-industries and circular economy. As an idea of problem solving, here is just a way to address the need of, you know, creating a different dynamics, allowing some of the local companies to enter in this trend towards digitalization. What is important is that, you know, the Basque Country is leveraging on the transformative power of the innovative entrepreneurship by opening the environment to foreign companies. So it's not only addressing for local SMEs, but also allowing some other companies from abroad to compete. So the government provides the platform, the space. The local Basque Country companies provide the demand, the contracts. You can see some of the figures there. The first contract up to 150,000 euros. Average contract so far is 45,000 euros. But the idea is this been growing, and how this is also the directionality, because there is a very clear idea of transformation. So the model is there. You can also go and look for information around, you know, some of the successes. One of the interesting cases is that the model is being also adopted in other regions. In Mexico, for example, in the northern part of the country, one of the provinces that has a very strong history of industrialization has now adopted a similar model, and combining small startups, very dynamic, technologically complex, to work together with companies in Mexico to enable some of the transformations around digitalization and internationalization. So this is an idea that, you know, how to use also innovative entrepreneurship to mobilize dynamics in a market or in an ecosystem that, you know, starts getting a bit behind because of the transformation that requires. And I will just stop there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fernando. We have now time for questions. I've been request. Please raise your hand and to ask a question. You can go down at the bottom and click on reactions, and that will allow. And then you can click on raise your hand for if you want to speak. But if you have a question, you can always ask the question through the chat also. But it's always better if you intervene directly in the webinar. Any questions? Or maybe my colleagues there, maybe my colleagues from IATT have a question. Raise your hand, or well, I can start with always. Fernando, something that always puzzles me is what is an innovative entrepreneur? You say it's a special kind of creative person, but can you also judge them by what they do rather than by what they are? And what do they do? New products, new combination. What exactly do creative, and how can they differentiate them from normal entrepreneurs in terms of outputs, not in terms of inputs?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, yeah, in that sense, if you describe it in sort of generic terms, yes, you can always have a new product or a new service. What is important here is the sort of what we call the knowledge content, right? So it's not the same as providing you know, a new application through a mobile phone, or a new device that enables you to sort of monitor your health, you know, real time without going to the doctor and sending that, or you know, just providing a new way, you know, service delivery. You might launch an entrepreneurial activity by linking, you know, your neighbors, you know, driving your bicycle, and then creating this connection between, you know, your shop and your customer, right? For the bicycle driving, that might be an entrepreneurial activity, but really the opportunities that those create for in terms of new knowledge, new growth technologies might be more limited. Yeah? These can be sort of, when you talk about the technology, there is also a lot of effort around what we call, or people say the social innovation, right? Transforming the interaction that you have, for example, with the environment, right? For example, I remember a case in Uganda where, you know, people used to chop trees because they wanted to plant, expand the area for plantation. What happened is that in some of the communities got together and connected to one of the research centers in Uganda. They understood that these trees, the goods that could be used for these trees, was more valuable than just chopping them and creating some sort of you know, land for growing things. So
we have a question here from Lefa.
A different interaction between the communities and the environment. Now it was not about chopping trees; it was more about creating, targeting the forest, because that became also of value for them. Right, so transforming nature into some kind of business opportunity that also created in return this idea of protecting the environment. So that, I think, that also is the kind of things that we have in mind. Okay,
Lefa Tamay from Lesotho, you've raised your hand. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm here. Thank you so much
yes,
for giving me the opportunity. Yes, as Lesotho, we have just completed our research and innovation policy 2 weeks back. And now this presentation is more relevant to us, and because we are just starting, and we will need this kind of experiences and support from most of these financial institutions, particularly because we want to start. We are going to start because now, since now we are just waiting a few weeks for our policy to be approved by the cabinet, and once that is done, I think we are going to run. And I would like to thank the last speaker for really motivating me, and also the presentation. Innovation and entrepreneurship are my major important issues, really. And I would like to thank the speakers, and for myself to be joining this kind of training workshop is one of the most important, most crucial, and most relevant to me and my country. Really, thank you so much. Thank you so much once again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Lefa, for that nice comment. Any other question or issue you want to raise? Do we have Nobody else raising questions? Maybe one of our colleagues from UN-IATT has. Okay, well, we're on our time anyway, so thank you. I will now move on to the next presentation. Fernando has just given us an introduction on the innovative entrepreneurship. Now we're going to move into the experiences. We're going to start analyzing concrete regional experiences on how to strengthening the innovation ecosystem. And we have two great presenters. We have from UNIDO, Marco Camilla, who will lead us the first presentation and will concentrate on a developed country. And then we will move into Nicolo Giglo, who will tell us a bit of the experience in Latin America. Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ludovico and all colleagues. It's a pleasure to be part of this event and have the opportunity to share some ideas. So let me share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, this presentation is on designing innovation policies in Japan and Kenya. So those are very different countries. So the reason I have selected these two examples is because I'm very close to this. So I was involved in innovation policies in Japan, and I also more recently I was living in Kenya working for UN-Habitat. And so I want to describe some of the interesting experiences that can be useful for you, that most of you are, as I see, policymakers or entrepreneurs. There are academics as well attending this event, and you can get some of the ideas to leverage in your daily work. One of the things that I want to emphasize, it was already discussed by my colleague Fernando Santiago, is on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And just to summarize the main elements of the entrepreneurial ecosystems, so I want to indicate that this is composed by science, that is basic science, innovation, finance, and SME scaling up. These are the four elements of an entrepreneurial, and I will say SME ecosystem, no? And basic science are fundamental discoveries, not necessarily has an application to the market, but in some universities, in some places in the world, universities, faculties specialize in doing basic science, no? And this is typically funded by the government because this is long-term and not necessarily leads to an innovation. But it's the role of the entrepreneurs, of the private sector, to take all these discoveries into innovation, designing products, converting and bringing something to the market, adding value and selling them, and converting this into something that is useful and solving an issue in society. But in order to do this, the entrepreneurs need finance, and this finance is capital, venture capital, and also financial support for SMEs to grow. And finally is the ecosystem that specifically SMEs need in order to scale up, in order not to be small forever, but in order to expand sales and markets at the regional and at the global level. So these four elements, keep in mind, because at the end, I'm going to going back to this on some of the recommendations for policymakers as well as for entrepreneurs. So basic science, innovation, finance, and SME scaling up. So I have 2 or 3 slides for Japan describing how is the ecosystem, no, in Japan. And you will say that maybe this is too far from the SADC region, no? the Southern Africa Development Community, no? But let's review first the experience of Japan, and then we will move to Kenya, and you can get some of the elements also that you can potentially apply to your countries, and you can get also some important concepts and frameworks. No? One of the most important things in the case of Japan, and considering that dimensions are absolutely different, because for an SMEs in Japan, it has to be a company that has at least 300 employees and at least $3 million of annual capital. So this will be a large, very large company in some of the developing countries, and especially in the south of Africa. But one important thing is how all the components of the ecosystem are interlinked. And in Japan, you have the prefecture, that are the different provinces or states, depending how you call this in your countries. You have the METI, that is the Ministry of Industry, and the Agency for Small and Medium Enterprises. And then it comes a full battery of different organizations supporting on the finance. So there is an organization supporting specifically with business consultation, business seminar, lectures, providing this to the private sector, providing this to SMEs in order to promote and to support. And this is done in consultation with the Chamber of Commerce and the Commerce and Industry Association. There is also the Japan External Trade Organization that works mostly with the embassies of Japan across the world. And this helps companies to internationalize, to look for new markets. Then there is specific banks, banks supporting entrepreneurship or SME development that provides the necessary finance in order for companies to grow up. And there is also important relatively smaller organization that is a Credit Guarantee Corporation that provides guarantees in order to lower the cost of credit to small and medium enterprises. So all these organizations are interlinked, and this is what provides the strength to the ecosystem in Japan. Yeah? Then this, on one side, you have all the policies, but then what about entrepreneurship, more specifically entrepreneurship? And my colleague Nicola Giglio is going to present on the Startup Chile, but I just want to provide just a small appetizer. No? And in the case of Japan, there are for each of the prefectures or each of the cities, the startup initiative that they provide financing to potential entrepreneurs, to ideas, and to identify ideas and business plans that can be scaled up. And they provide a loan that is 35 million yens, that is equivalent to $350,000. And there are prices also as well, $1 million yens and is equivalent to $100,000. But this is done at the local level. So the cities are organizing this, and this goes through the municipality to the potential entrepreneurs. Yeah. So let's move to the case of Africa. And in the question and answers, if there are questions, so I can clarify or expand on elaborate on the cases of Japan and Kenya. No? And in Kenya, there is very vibrant entrepreneurial activity at three levels. One is on the at the policy level. The Kenya government has a long operation with the World Bank, and this operation links entrepreneurship with SME development. That is very clever because it's not separating entrepreneurship from SMEs, that consider that both are interlinked. And there are a number of components that you can review this. Actually, this is available online, the long operation. You can review if you are a policymaker and you want to design a policy for entrepreneurship or for SMEs in your countries. There is also the Silicon Savannah that is mimicking Silicon Valley, that is providing incentive ideas in the financial industry, manufacturing, retail, healthcare, agriculture, mobile-enabled technologies, drones, and 3D printing. No, more recently, 3D printing is getting a powerful boost. There are a number of companies even building apartments and houses using 3D printing. This is something that it was very difficult to do in the past, but now more and more with the 4IR technologies, is being possible. And then there are specific challenges led by UN agencies, led by private investors, and also by organizations. And I just want to mention one example, and this is something that you can potentially organize in your countries and in your city as well. This is something that we organized 2 years ago when I was in UN-Habitat, linking investors from Asia, actually bringing investors from China that were successfully operating in Beijing, and linking them with potential entrepreneurs in Eastern Africa. And we did this from Nairobi. And from Nairobi, we organize, we make a call for ideas, and we design challenges, urban challenges. So what are the main problems in the city, like street lighting, like waste disposal, like security, and then we establish a number of challenges and we call for ideas to solve this problem. No, and we propose these universities, faculty of engineering, to come with a solution and to put a price on this. How much will cost to implement this solution? Then we link together these potential entrepreneurs, young people, with the investors, and that was very successful because now there are a number of potential operations moving forward, and some of them getting financing. And this is actually relatively easy to organize if you partner with a good organization, a UN agency that is motivated to champion this, or an organization that is working on challenges. So after saying this, so let me say how we can boost entrepreneurship. And I don't want to sound too simplistic, but based on the experience that we have seen, some of the things you can take in order to strengthen your activities is that if you are a policymaker, first thing is to map out your innovation ecosystem, the ecosystem I presented at the beginning, and then identify if there are gaps. Certainly, something you don't have in your countries that there are not in developing countries is universities doing basic science. So that means you need to partner through a UN organization, through a development bank, with one of these places where basic science is being done. No? And link your faculty of engineering with those faculties that doing basic science, of course, because your country is not being able to invest on something that doesn't have an immediate application. So second is find your partners in the public sector. Then consider development finance for SMEs and entrepreneurship. Kenya decided that it was better to look for operation loan with the World Bank, but you can also consider with the African Development Bank or some other agencies or bilateral aid in order to finance an entrepreneurship initiative. Or you can consider supporting your country with the embassies, UN agencies, as I mentioned. You can also consider commercial banks as well. And if you are an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. You have to map out the innovation ecosystem, identify the strength of the universities, of the faculties of engineering, of the faculties of management, and then what are the resources, if there is available seed capital, angel investor, venture capital, and how you can do in order to access those resources. And then look for support in your country through the embassies, through the UN agencies, and through development bank. So all this will hopefully make easier for you to access these diverse resources. And what I see from my recent experience here at UNIDO is that African countries in general are doing something unthinkable before. And this is, they are taking advantage of things that are so complicated that 4IR, they are implementing this into different projects, coming to the industry. The same thing we see a very important initiative on finance and on innovation. So with this, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Marco. At the moment, I'm wondering whether there's any question for Marco at this stage that anybody wants to raise. Yeah, I just wanted to Mark, while we prepare we can also have a further discussion after the next presentation in a minute, which is going to be, but if I just want to use the opportunity to bring Fernando back, because there was a question to Fernando in the chat that I omitted. So I'll ask Fernando to answer that question, while I ask the participants to please raise their hand for questions for Marco or any comments they may have. Fernando, answer.
Yeah, I'll try to do it quickly. I mean, yeah, thank you for the question. It's interesting. I mean, this idea of how the formation of cooperatives in Spain. I mean, this is a very long process. The policy, the cluster policy started more than 30 years ago. I started to, identify more on the regional dynamics or regional agglomeration, geographical agglomeration, right? Over time, the Basque Country, the authorities of the Basque Country, they had evolved together with the industrial ecosystem. So, as companies started, creating dynamic processes, not only at the geographical level, but also the cluster organization itself started growing as a governance and as a consultative body and as a way to connect, to link to the government. Then things started to become not only easier because you have an interlocutor, but also because I think something that is important here is social capital. You have to start building trust. You start getting to know your partners, and of course, there is a tradition. You have to understand a bit of the history of a region, the northern part of Spain, not isolated generally, but difficult to access, difficult orography. So people tend to have very close bonding, and also there is a lot of solidarity. There is I mean, in many of our countries we say very solidarity, very supportive of other. There's also some value in that. So I think it's an interesting case to go deeper. I don't have the time, but I think this cooperative movement and the cluster movement has evolved from idea of regional agglomeration to something that is becoming more of a consultative body, an interlocutor for the government, but also is becoming a way for companies to, when there is need, for example, to go beyond the idea we are competing, or sort of we are collaborating, this is kind of a forum where they go and without feeling, they are threatening their business. I mean, we went to visit them, and some of these are family-run businesses from the very ancient time. And whenever there is an issue that, supporting, there's also some ideas that, could be interesting to look at. But this idea is long-term involvement and having some kind of processes in place that allow government with organizations to interact over time and create a positive dynamics. Yeah?
Thank you, Fernando. We have a question here by Mushayandebvu. Please ask your question or your comment. Most welcome.
Yeah, you can call me Teach. I'm the unit or country rep here in Zimbabwe.
Okay. Okay. This is an internal question, but welcome nonetheless.
Basically, my question is to Marco and also Fernando, because really, I think the biggest stumbling block which we find in terms of supporting innovative entrepreneurship is where to get, the initial grant funding, which we can use to engage key stakeholders, because you need really to engage them on that, concept itself as you develop, the intervention, and going beyond that, you may need also to do the mapping of the ecosystem. So for me, fundamentally, I've been struggling for the past 2 years to get, the initial grant funding to enable me to do the stakeholder consultation and, partnership building exercise, and also do the mapping exercise for the ecosystem. And from your experience, where do you think, is the best port or best, institutions to approach on such an agenda? Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I will say that the main message of my presentation is that the ecosystem is always incomplete in developing countries. Yeah, but that doesn't prevent, that is not an obstacle for an entrepreneurship. On the contrary, when you map out the resources that you have and the gaps, you can identify the international partners as well and how you can complete the ecosystem. So the ecosystem not necessarily has to be geographically located, but it can be globally located as well. In the case of financing, this financing used to be actually the main driver of entrepreneurship. What I was surprised to see today in the Mentimeter, that actually market opportunity it was larger than the finance. So I will say that this is linked to the context. So it depends the country you are operating and the funds available. Usually the public sector in many developing countries don't provide direct financing to entrepreneurs. So you have to identify international resources. And I think if your idea is original and is innovative, you can approach these investors. And if you have the strength and the resources to organize an international event linking both potential investors with entrepreneurial ideas, that can be a starting point to get finance and to find new allies, new partners in order to strengthen this component that is a financial gap in your country or in your city.
Thank you, Marco. We have another question also about Tafirenica Macandua. Can you please unmute yourself and also you switch your camera on? Thank you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mine is related to the issue of funding, which is the question that has just been asked. I got interested in the entrepreneurship program that you are doing with the Kenyan. Of course, the issue of urban challenges. And my question was with regards to sustainability. How or what have you put in place to ensure that the program is sustainable?
You mean how to ensure that the program is sustainable, no?
Financially.
Well, this starts with the map out of the ecosystem and the identification of the allies. Yeah, this is case by case in each of the countries, in each of the cities is quite context oriented. I don't have a specific answer to this, rather than having when we start an important a deep understanding of who are the potential allies and an understanding of what is the ecosystem, what are the strengths. I will say that this is the way what we can advance. Actually, my colleagues also, Nicolo Giglio, will explain more about the case of Startup Chile and all these particular elements.
Okay, Fernando, you want to add something?
Yeah, just very quickly. Yeah, thank you. I think
very quickly, yeah, but very quickly.
Mark is very right, but I think it also depends on the kind of, that's where you have the link between STI policies and industrial policy, for example, and the promotion, for example, of public procurement for targeting specific societal groups. You see examples, I think, in Uganda and even in the Dominican Republic, where there is a quota for public procurement of SMEs owned by women or the youth, right? So you will create certain mechanisms that enable securing certain market opportunities at demand. So when demand is a problem, so as Marco said, you need to really understand what the reasons are behind failure, right? Understand that failure is not necessarily bad, but in this case, that's a highly high risk of failure, but it's not an issue per se. You have to understand the root, the causes for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Fernando. What we will do now is we will move on to the next presentation. The next presentation will be by Nicolo Giglio. Nicolo Giglio will tell us a bit about the case of Startup Chile, which is one of the most interesting attempts, probably in the developing world, to generate new startups and entrepreneurial activity with some success, but perhaps I should leave Nicolo to tell us the details. Thank you. Nicolo, floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludo. Can you see the screen, the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So good afternoon to all. I'm going to talk about a I think, very interesting case. It's called Startup Chile. Startup Chile is a government initiative, kind of a business accelerator, startup accelerator. And it has some elements that I think are very interesting to share with you in order to design these kind of programs. But it's very important to understand Startup Chile as part of a learning process. So I'm going to spend some time, and maybe a lot of the time of my presentation, telling you about the history of Startup Chile and how it, as I said, is part of this learning process. Let's put ourselves in 1990 in Chile. After the return to democracy, the new government wanted to encourage, promote science, technology, and innovation. So with the help of the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, create what was called the Science and Technology Program, the first policy, very comprehensive policy to encourage science, technology, and innovation. In order to do that, they create two additional funds. Previously, there was Fondesit, that is, it's a fund that was supporting researchers, individual researchers that present projects from universities in order to get some funds to develop these projects. They create two additional funds. One was called Fondef, and this was a fund that was trying to create a link, a bridge between universities and companies in order to make this transition from research to innovation, and also create a specific fund dedicated to support projects, innovation projects presented by companies, by private companies. So with these three funds, this was the base of this science and technology program. So we, with the focus on different actors, universities and researchers, the link between universities and the private sector and companies. So they operate this program, the first program of 4 years. They evaluated, it was very successful, then create a second part of this program. So in the year, around the year 2000, all these policymakers were thinking, okay, what else we can do? We have these funds, we have created, we improve all these funds, we focus, we change, we evaluate, we monitor, but we need to do something else. What is missing? One of the things that were missing is that we were helping companies that already exist. So in order to change, in order to make a structural change in the country, we need to create new sectors and new companies. So they think, okay, we need to now to help entrepreneurs. We need to help to support the creation of new companies. So the question was, okay, how do we do that? Yeah. Well, what do startups, entrepreneurs need? Well, they have an idea and they need the money. They cannot find the resources because banks, they are not going to lend the money. We don't have venture capital. We don't have seed money to support this project. So what we are going to do as part of the development agency that was running some of these funds, and the Chilean Economic Development Agency that is called Corfo. Sorry, I didn't say that at the beginning. They decided to improve the environment where these entrepreneurs develop. So they create some incentives in order to create a venture capital market, a seed market, and they provide subsidies in order to create some funds to support entrepreneurs. At the same time, they said, okay, well, entrepreneurs need some kind of support. So we are going to also to support the creation of incubators. Yeah. So these incubators are going to help companies. I don't know if you see some of the patterns here, in the sense that Corfo was not doing these things directly. Corfo provides money, provide financial resources in order to someone else to create these funds, someone else to create this incubator. And this is the way that most of the programs of Corfo operate. Okay, but so they create this process. They create these funds. They create supporting funds, and they support these incubators. But after a while, nothing was happening. Okay, and they say, well, what's the problem? And when they talk with all these funds, venture capital funds or seed capital funds, angel networks, and this incubator, they said, we don't have projects. Yeah, it's not a problem of money. The problem is that we don't have projects. We cannot find projects to finance. And that was one of the problems. At that moment, we are now in 2010. After all this process, there was a Chilean that was graduating from Stanford University from an MBA program. And he saw there was also a new government in place, and he saw an opportunity, a problem, an opportunity. Some of his classmates were graduating. They wanted to stay in the US. They have a business idea, but they couldn't stay because they don't have the visa status to stay in the country. So he thought, well, what happened if I bring these people to Chile and help them to develop their business in Chile? And this was the basic idea of a startup Chile. So with a new government in place, he has some contacts, and he helped the Ministry of Economy to create the first pilot of a startup Chile. Yeah. What was the basic idea? Startup Chile was trying to attract people from the world to live in Chile and to develop their ideas. In order to do that, they provided a working visa. They facilitate all the process for these people to come to Chile and legally develop their business. They provide some money. The previous question we're talking about financing. They provide some money, $40,000. That is not too much. That is, in some cases, it's very little money in order to develop a new company, a new project. But they provided $40,000 and a working space. And also they help them to be part of a network and create a network in Chile. And with this idea in mind, they promote these pilots around the world, mostly specifically in the US. They made a roadshow. One of their executives were 3 months visiting the different innovation clusters in the US, promoting this idea. And in the first round, they call round because it's a kind of call. They received their projects, and they received more than 300 projects in these pilots. Today, 10 years later, this program has evolved. Then in terms of money, they don't provide only $4,000. They have different stages and different kind of support. In the very basic stage, they provide around $20,000. When you have a product, an early validation of your product, they can provide up to $65,000, and they can provide up to $78,000 in order to expand your business. But money is not, I would say, it's not the main asset or value added of this program. It's all the environment and all the interaction that they create with these entrepreneurs, with this startup. I think what it makes more valuable what they are providing. They have an academy, a training program with workshops, talks, different kind of activities. This kind of meetings where you can do all the network, pitching, training, etc. It's very important, the network that they create. They're very active in activities to help entrepreneurs meet other entrepreneurs, meet universities, meet potential financiers. And it's more important in this case is the experience that they create, the most important things. In order to do that, they need to have a special kind of executives or professionals working in a startup Chile. They are very young people. They are very motivated, and in some kind, you can say that they are entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs. What you see in them is very different on what you see in other parts of the government that are supporting science and technology. In other parts of the government, they are very used to receive these projects, evaluate the projects, make the comments, approve the projects, finance it, and then see what's happening. In this case, they are a kind of a partner. They help to develop the project within the entrepreneurs. Sorry, with the entrepreneurs, and this style is very important, and I think it's very unique. For example, this is one of the activities that they have done. The demo day is kind of like a big show with they bring financier people that work in financing projects. It's like they're like rock stars. They present them, and all these entrepreneurs and startup has to make the pitch and try to sell the ideas, etc. In terms of evaluation and impact, and I have like two more minutes. It's the objectives when they create the Startup Chile was to change the nation's culture towards entrepreneurship and to position Chile as an innovation hub for Latin America. And I think that this is very qualitative, but I think that there's proof that they did it. They position Chile in the international media. They put Chile on the map, and this program was copied by many countries. In some of the first directors of this program now are consultants that are traveling around the world, helping other countries to create this kind of programs. And what you can see in Chile is that you cannot say that everything that is happening now is because of Startup Chile, but you can say that Startup Chile enter in the right moment to ignite a process where now everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Now it's cool to be an entrepreneur. When my father, in the time of my father, when they get out of the university, they wanted to work in a public company. when I get out of the university, when I graduated, I wanted to work in a private company. Now, people that graduate wanted to be entrepreneurs, and this is different, and this is a big change in the last 10 years. In terms of numbers, since 2010, they have support almost 2,000 startups from 85 countries. 26% of them are from Chile. The other 24% are from other countries, and 26% of them are led by women. They have an interesting rate of survival. If you see, almost 1/3 of the companies that were supported in 2010 are still alive. The average is 54.5%. The valuation of the companies, they have like a formal valuation. Almost 1/5 of them is more than $1.4 billion. And just some quick notes to finish this presentation. First, as I said at the beginning, you have to see this as a learning process, as a continuing learning process, and you should not be afraid of trial and error. And this is very important. Startup Chile is a program that survived 4 different governments from different sides of the political spectrum, and this is very important. Also, as Marco was saying, we were talking about an ecosystem, yeah, and there's no one initiative that is going to solve or to create or strengthen this ecosystem. So Startup Chile was focused in one or two specific issues, but it's part of an ecosystem, so there's no silver bullet. And also, it is very important that you bring the right people for the right task. And in the case of Startup Chile, you can say that this is a different breed. It's entrepreneurs supporting entrepreneurs, and this is, I think, it's part of the success of this initiative.
Thank you.
And back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, after this presentation of an interesting case that has succeeded and has been also a model for many other countries. Any questions? Do you questions? Raise there. A couple of hands. Yes. Damian, can you, s'il vous plaît, poser votre question? Damian, can you, Damian? Okay, he's asked to unmute. Let me unmute you. You're unmuted. Damian, you can ask your question. Hello? Okay, we will move to the next question. Mushayadebdu, you can ask your question. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Call me teacher. Mushayadebdu is
okay.
Two questions. I understand that the Startup Chile is a private enterprise. It's or is it a government initiative?
It's a government initiative. It's part of the Economic Development Agency.
Okay, because I see that in other African countries, issues to do with the science, innovation, and technology, they are housed under the Ministry of Education, and that is one of the biggest structural challenge if you approach it that way. My perception would be that if you were to house it under the Ministry of Industry or under the Ministry of Economic Finance, that would be a better approach. But that is my own thinking, which may be wrong. But I think putting it under the Ministry of Education, it becomes an academic exercise rather than an entrepreneurship development activity. The other issue which I wanted to find out, I know that in Chile, the basis for entrepreneurship, innovation entrepreneurship, especially in terms of the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and maths, that you have got a very sound basis. But that is not the case in most Southern African countries. STEM subjects are not very popular, and the government are trying to move towards supporting, those subjects. For me, it's a fundamental proviso for you really to push, innovation, entrepreneurship, or to push the industrial development agenda forward. If really you have those STEM subjects being supported big time by governments. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what you are describing is a very common issue. You have on one side universities, basic research, and this is under most of the time under the umbrella of the Ministry of Education, because they deal with universities. And under this Ministry of Education, there's a department, a division, or a subsecretary that is in charge of science and technology. On the other side, you have companies and innovation. Basic research on one side, companies and innovation in the other. And the ones that deal with companies are the Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Industry, or Development Agency. And these worlds are not connected. In the best of cases, you have two pillars. One that is helping these universities and basic research. Another pillar that is helping companies, and there's a kind of coordination body between these two worlds. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's very common in many countries to be this way. But in order to develop an entrepreneurship environment, in order to create a startup, even high-tech startups, some of them can come from the basic and STEM area, and you have to make this bridge. But there also you can focus directly on this side, in this pillar, and develop. And in this way, you can make this bridge and attract from the other side. In my personal experience, I remember when I was studying. It's sorry to talk about something that is very narrow, but in the business school, yeah, there were this kind of contest in order to support entrepreneurship, and were the ones at the business school that were going to the engineering school looking for some classmates in order to develop these projects. You need to create this bridge, but most of the time the core is in the business area, and I think that you need to focus a lot in this area, and sometimes in countries are very focused on supporting science and tech, basic research, and not supporting business development. In Latin America, for example, is the government the main financer of R&D, and are the universities the one that are executing these budgets. In the more developed world, is other way around. Are the companies the one that are providing financing and also executing most of this research?
Okay, thank you. We have a number of questions. So, Matodi, you can you raise your hand. Can you ask your question now? Matodi? Are you there? You are unmuted, so we okay, no, we If you can write your question in the chat anyway, if it doesn't work, but okay, let me ask Dam Niang. Let's hope that you can ask your question now. Dam Niang, can you unmute yourself now? Try. Perfect.
Oui.
Now we can see.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Voilà, voilà. Merci, monsieur le présentateur. Je le remercie pour sa présentation pour ce cas sur Startup Child. Bon, je voudrais lui demander, est-ce que ce modèle a été repris par un pays africain et comment ça s'est passé? Parce que nous, au Sénégal, c'est pas le modèle qui est fait ici. Nous avons une structure dénommée DER, Délégation à l'entrepreneuriat rapide, donc qui finance des projets de start-up. Donc, les entrepreneurs soumettent des projets, donc sur la base desquels la structure évalue pour financer. Et c'est pas accessible parfois à tout le monde, c'est pas très facile. Et je pense que le modèle qui a été présenté par M. Niclio est un modèle quand même qui peut nous intéresser en Afrique. C'est pourquoi je voulais lui demander, est-ce que ce modèle a été appliqué dans un pays africain et comment ça s'est passé pour permettre aux entrepreneurs de mettre en place des projets. Je vous remercie.
Okay. Bon. Nicola, did you understand the question?
I don't know if any African country has applied or not. I really don't know. I can check and I can send you the information if I can find it. And you are right about that in most countries they finance projects, specific projects, evaluate and finance projects. And what is important about the Startup Chile is that what I say they create and support an environment for the companies. Money is only one element, and not the most important one in this case, because companies will need to find the money, but they are going to find it in as part of this ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Damian, and now we have Georgina from Zambia raising her hand. Yes, come in, please.
Yes, greetings to all the participants.
Yes.
My question is on business incubation centers that was spoken about by the previous presenter. So the question is, what mechanisms do you have for setting up business incubation center? That's the first question, that mechanisms. Then the second one, what is the incubation period for incubatees to be weaned off from the incubation center? Then the third one is these incubatees, are they supported with startup as they leave the incubation center, so that wherever they go to practice entrepreneurship or any business, they are able to run their business effectively? Those are my three questions. I submit.
Thank you. The answer for the question 2 and 3 is I don't know. Yeah. Sorry. The answer for question 1 is that the Chilean Economic Development Agency, Corfo, they're used to create mechanism, incentives, and provide, in order to do this, they provide subsidies for specific purposes. So they create a specific mechanism where, in this case, if I remember well, universities could apply to this support in order to create an incubator. Also, I think that there were some business councils, I think, that could apply too. but there were mostly a way to support universities with subsidies to some infrastructure and for the operation of the incubator for a period of time. I think it was about a year. I don't remember very well. In order to start up their own process, the incubator process, and with the goal in mind that after this initial support, they are going to find they're going to be able to continue in this process without this initial support.
Thank you, Nicolo. There is one question in the chat by Alines Chaguilla. Would you like to unmute yourself to ask a question, or is it enough that I read it? Well, Alines, well, I will read. Congratulations, Chile. Just how did you implement your program to reduce the developmental gaps that are always there between the rural and the urban communities in developing countries, with rural communities usually lagging far behind? Did you make a deliberate move to give a certain allocation for rural communities? Thank you. So the rural-urban divide, and did you have any emphasis on rural community?
Very fast before I answer the question, I just Googled, and there are some initiatives in Africa related to Startup Chile regarding the first question. So yes, there's some initiatives, and I think it's interesting that maybe I can do it a little more formal research and prepare a note. But,
so can I suggest that they write to you and ask for more details later on?
Yes,
would that be okay?
Not a problem. Not a problem. I can do it. But by the way, I'm not part of Startup Chile, so it's I can answer. I was involved on the history that I told you, but I'm not part of Startup Chile itself. So it's there's some questions that I could answer and others I don't. Well, in terms of rural and rural divide, I don't think that Startup Chile get into that. What was trying first at the beginning, the main focus was how to attract foreign entrepreneurs. That's it. And the pilot was exclusively for foreigners. After that, they opened the possibility that local, meaning Chileans, could apply. And in this process, they have been changing, and I think that there's a focus, we're focused to decentralize, in the sense that Chile is a very centralized country, meaning that at least 60% of this of Chile is in one urban area, but the goal was to decentralize, meaning that from different regions of Chile try to provide encourage to apply for the program, but not making a difference if it's rural or urban.
Many thanks, Nicolo. We had a lot of discussion. That's always very important. Without further ado, I will just pass on the floor to Dimo so that he can conduct the exercise that we had done. Dimo, I will, as I said, I will adjust for the time at the end, so you will have the time that you need for your exercise.
Of course, thank you, Ludo. I want to make a comment, because I find the last couple of presentations really excellent and very pointed. But there was this very interesting question of how the STI policy mandate stumbles into the Ministry of Education. And what I like to tell people when I do capacity building in person and do this in countries that are part of our policy review program is that one of the things that we often find in STI policy in many countries is that the STI policy has a big S, a medium T, and a small I. And the thing we have to do in our policy work is to introduce STI with a big I, a medium T, and a small s in order to rebalance the situation. And about the issue of STEM subject, I mean, it's an interesting issue, but then we face the problem of what are all these STEM graduates going to do when they finish university. And here, I think the main issue, and this is something that Mark was talking about earlier. I mean, we have to use this innovation ecosystem or innovation systems approach, where industry is consulted in terms of how we want to develop the human capacities in the country. And I don't mean just by having someone sitting in a curriculum committee, but we have to raise the level of active interaction much higher level than it is now. Currently, most of these curriculum committees, they just rubber stamp whatever the Ministry of Education comes about. Now, with that, I'll pass on to my presentation. Let me share my screen now. And it was okay. Okay, can you tell me what do you see? Do you see the full screen or
presentation mode?
We can see
Let's
presentation
see
mode.
the presentation mode. We're seeing the both slides. Swap. Yes.
What about now? Is that better now?
That's what we need.
Okay, so I can continue like this. Okay, fine. Well, first, let me thank all the people. There was 18 of them who provided their inputs to this case study. I hope it was interesting for them to read. The 4 cases that are presented, they're all actually real. Of course, the names and places, like in a good thriller movie or book, the names and places have been changed, but the essence is the same. And they're all real cases of firms and entrepreneurs struggling and working to make their mark and somehow come up with something that they think is a valid, innovative proposition. So let's go for the first. I was very surprised by the actual question, which firm is the most innovative, and it turns out that AgroTools has been chosen as to be the most innovative. In the previous exercise that we've done with this questionnaire and these cases, it was either Binopay or Ecomil. Ecomil is now in the last place or tied for second place with Binopay. But interestingly, very few people put Ecomil as their first choice. We can discuss this later, but it's very peculiar, this kind of result. Of course, AgroTools, they have an innovation proposal as well, and it's an interesting one. But somehow, I think the audience, they had a very different perspective. This also goes to show that innovation, however much we define it, however much we have our presentations, we have our charts and all the structures and the frameworks and the way we divide things up and list. At the end of the day, everyone has their own perspective of what actually is innovative, and it varies from person to person, from group to group, country to country, and so forth. So there is no real consistency here, although from point of view of capacity building, we would like to see necessarily more consistency on this question. It's very difficult. It goes also to show that it's very difficult to actually identify who is the innovative one in this whole group. The questions 2 through 5 dealt with what is the underlying innovation. And one thing that we tend to do when we define innovation is we tend to say that we have a more inclusive approach. We can have technology processes, we can have soft technology, marketing, logistics, we can have business model innovation, and then we have the new innovation categories, these social innovation, etc. But at the end of the day, most companies, most firms, most entrepreneurs, they usually think of product or service instead of process. Process is an afterthought for the delivery. And the reason why is because most of them work off of identifying market opportunities, as we saw in one of the earlier Mentimeter questionnaires. Compared to a previous exercise, it's more or less it's kind of a similar balance in the responses that we had. So that part is consistent, even though the first question was not consistent with previous experiences. Now, questions 6 through 10 dealt with asking which firm was innovating by, and there were 5 proposals. But what this question is actually about is, again, is who is the innovative firm or the most innovative firm. So if we look at the 5 categories, replacing existing products, taking market share, seeking opportunities for import substitution, reacting to changes in the environment, or reacting to social changes. The way we can interpret this is we say, well, we look at which color is the most dominant there, and it's obviously the red one is the most dominant, and that is EcoMil. And in many other exercises, EcoMil does turn out to be the very dominant or preferred choice for the most innovative firm. Interesting enough, AgroTools comes out as the second one here, and what is a bit peculiar is Binopay, which is an ICT. It's a digital it's an enterprise, and the people are trying to put together, trying to meet some very common demand to those who have not had the chance to read it. It's a company that tries to provide mobile money cards to children so they don't have to carry their telephones around when they are in boarding school. So we keep having this spiel at UNCTAD, at the CSTD, at other meetings in New York, at the ITU in Geneva as well, about the digital technologies and digital technologies. Turns out that in everyday life, these digital technologies are not on everyone's mind as much as we think they are. And this is an example of that Binopay is not very well represented in this particular set of questions. Finance, a perennial problem. Here there are some issues here that I find. Of course, innovators will want to, as said before, will want to have some kind of grant for research and innovation projects. Yes, but here we have a problem with who is actually managing the fund that grants the innovation projects, and this is a very, how would you say, a concern that is very tied up. If the funding vehicle is with a body that is proximate to the Ministry of Education, or let's say a National Commission on Science and Technology, so if it's further away from innovation, we will get further away from funding innovation. So that's an interesting proposition there. What I find somewhat peculiar is that quite a few respondents said that a bank loan would be appropriate. In my research and spending quite a lot of time in Rwanda, Uganda, and Zambia, I found that the commercial banks are completely dysfunctional entities as regards funding innovation. And one of the biggest gripes that most entrepreneurs have is that bank loans are not accessible. Often they require security that's far in excess of the actual underlying business proposition, and generally they are not a good partner to deal with. Reinvestment of profits, clearly a major issue. In a sense, when we look at these selections, all of these proposals, they fit into a different part of the life cycle of a particular firm, which is completely a different another story, but maybe we get to that at some other session in our discussions here. Question 12, intellectual property. Again, a bit of a surprise. I don't know why IP is necessary for these companies to grow and develop. I think there's a certain gospel about the absolute necessity of IP that has been promoted by a number of interests and agencies. At least at UNCTAD, we don't subscribe to this, but I see it's well embedded. I assume that I think there were 4 replies at the bottom saying that it will be too expensive for them considering their earnings and growth potential. And I think this is the main perspective that one has to have with IP, and that is, what is my revenue flow as an entrepreneur, and what kind of IP tool can I use to maximize it, if any at all? So I think the question really has to be posed, from from that point of view, rather than from some absolute perspective of what is needed or not. Again, a bit of a surprising answer to me. I don't think any of these companies they may have funding to maybe take out a trademark on one or the other products, or on the name of the companies and so forth. But as far as IP, maybe BinoPay may have some advantages of having IP, but my understanding is that BinoPay actually manages IP without IP. It does it through trade secrets and non-disclosure contracts. So they've taken the intellectual property protection out of the intellectual property regime, and this is how they deal with it. Many digital companies actually do this, sign non-disclosure, also in pharmaceuticals as well. So instead of going to the intellectual property agencies in the country. So here's an interesting question, because it's the same question as we had the other day. The other day we had the question of what are the two key policy instruments in your country, and my question was which policies would be relevant for any or all of the firms and entrepreneurs. And so these are and I gave the same possibilities to respond. And these are the responses we can see. So we can compare the chart on top is what we had the other day, and the chart on the bottom is what I received today. So there are different perspectives on what are good or necessary policy instruments or that can contribute to firm level development, depending on whether you're looking at it as a policymaker or as a firm. And if you get into the mind of these entrepreneurs, as the survey shows, there are some differences. Just to point some things out, perhaps. One of the key differences is this entrepreneurship and business incubation. While it's considered important in many countries, it's from a firm entrepreneur's point of view, it's even more important. Tax incentives completely underrepresented in terms of importance as a STI policy instrument when you look at it as a policymaker. But from a firm point of view, if they cannot write off development costs, prototyping, some research and so forth, they if this cost, if they have to eat the cost of that and cannot deduct it from their as a cost, as a deductible cost from the tax statements, they just won't do it. The public procurement and support for private demand, these two are two different facets of the same coin. They are much more represented from a firm entrepreneur point of view. In fact, every firm would love to have a government procurement contract to kickstart some new product or service that it is doing. And indeed, these are the kind of vehicles that have been used in many developed countries to actually develop their most innovative service in industries, digital, aerospace, very much tied to defense contracts and so forth. So public procurement, it's a very interesting thing. When visiting these countries and other countries as well, one of the questions I always ask is, why isn't the military involved in procuring any of the products from the various startup firms? And I never get a response. Sometimes I get hash saying, "Oh no, they are in their own world. We don't want to, touch them too much. They have their own perspectives and things they do, and we're very distant from them." But it's just another ministry, just like any other ministry. And if you look at the experience in the developed world, this has been one of the key things, both as a test bed for innovative products, but also for just for sourcing procurement contracts, whether it's for a logistics service, or it can be all kinds of developing new food products, agro industry, and so forth. Public procurement contracts that supply one of the systems in the health system, school systems, or the military, it can be very important. One thing that I find peculiar in the response from firms and entrepreneurs is this much higher valuation of the science grants as a relevant policy instrument. I have I have yet to see, in any of the countries that I visited, that a science grant has actually led to any kind of innovation. There needs to be a very serious rethink of the science part of the STI policies. As they are. I found that they are largely dysfunctional and unproductive from a firm and entrepreneur perspective. And I don't know what is it. Is it that because in school we are taught that science has given us so many things, and we live with this? Of course, I'm not anti-science. I'm all for science, but the translation of science into technology and innovation is what is the task at hand. The science itself, most countries that have managed to come out of low income, developing, least developed status into kind of middle income countries, and the Asian experience here is a very indicative, I suppose, some of the Latin experience as well. And most of it tells us that refocusing efforts on technology identification, adaptation, and implementation in country rather than on basic scientific research has been necessarily the way forward. The scientific research never goes away, of course, but there needs to be a bit more of a focus on the other parts. Finally, there is this. I gave another list because I'm not very satisfied with with the list of policy that was given. And although it allowed me some opportunity to juxtapose the perspectives from a policymaker to those of an entrepreneur, I made another list of policies, and here we have some interesting answers as well. So these are, STA, I tend to think of STA policy as STA strategy. I don't like using the word STA policy because people always think of policy as a policy tool, or often think of policy as a policy tool. But clearly any kind of education policy is in a way an STA policy, and fiscal policy is in a way an STA policy, and so forth. And so many of these policies that are listed here, industrial, most of the what I found is that the national industrial policies across the board have better statements on what are the innovation, strategic innovation requirements and policies needed for the development of a particular country. It's much more well stated in industrial policy than in the STI policy, and I find this across the board in many countries. So just a few things that I really like. Policies on agriculture and rural development. We saw that we had a discussion on this just recently on the previous questions. There was a question on, okay, so what are we doing about agriculture and rural development? Environmental policies, the SDGs are way up there. That's really good to know that people see this as important. Policies supporting youth and entrepreneurship, that's great. Of course, the SME fund support, a very positive stance on that. But then on the STI fund, is much less, and I believe that is because most people understand an STI fund to be a science and research fund, not a technology and innovation fund aimed at firms and entrepreneurs. Something that I found a bit peculiar: gender policies not very highly ranked. With all the discussion about SDGs and inclusiveness and the need to have women's emancipation and positive gender policies throughout all our work, the policy work that we do at the UN, I find that this fairly low ranking of the gender policies as an important STI policy is very disappointing. I always tell my whoever wants to listen during my capacity building sessions is that if you don't have a strong gender policy, basically you are ignoring or disposing of half your population. I think many developing countries cannot afford to ignore half of their population and what they have to contribute. So we need to work much more on gender policy. ICT policy also very low ranked. A lot of the discussion that we're having nowadays is how digital technologies merge with traditional technologies and how this spurs exponential development, both on the macro level, but also at a firm level for enterprises that manage to achieve this symbiosis or matching of traditional and digital technologies. And the ICT policy there is crucial in order as an enabler for something like this. In our example, clearly AgroTools does not have much of of an ICT policy, but Quick Cuts, they're moving towards, they have an online reservation system and so forth. BinoPay is a digital innovative enterprise, and Eco Mills, their plan is to move towards having a digital waste management system that underpins their production. So I think I've used up all my time. The presentation contains a synopsis of the 4 cases. So for those who want to read this, and with that, I will stop. The presentation will be shared. If there are any questions, please. And thank you very much to all of you who filled in the questionnaire. It was as educated for me as I hope it was as interesting for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dimo. Dimo, I have to send a message to the French translator. French translator and the English translation is overlapping. We have to check that. Please contact the technical support. Okay, very quickly, we'll have 2 questions now. One from Ernest Gom from Senegal. Please go ahead. Just unmute yourself and ask your question. Please also connect your camera. No, no. Mina, we haven't lost. Maybe Mina, yes, you can.
Yes, for me, just to talk to what Dima has been saying, especially on the last slide, where he was talking about the gender policy. I was sort of intrigued by his explanation, but all I wanted to say was that, I mean, when I looked at the gender policies versus, a policy on women and youth, for me, the gender policy was a bit ambiguous. But then when you say women and youth, it was very clear. That is why you realize that women and youth in entrepreneurship was actually ranked as one of the top 3. And the gender policy was actually ranked very low, because what is gender policy really? It's just too general to have been anything, to actually pick. And then the last one, what was also, when I looked at the result, was a bit interesting for me, was question 12 in terms of IP policy. Because my understanding is that all these 4 companies knew what exactly they were doing. And for them to keep their competitive edge, of course, they could do a trademark. But when I read one of them talking about a trade secret, I think for them, especially whereby we're in a stage where people like to mimic what others are doing, I think they're better off actually keeping trade secrets or having non-disclosure agreements.
Yes.
So that is why really, even for me, the issue of IP didn't really rank high for me for all the 4 companies. Thank you.
I agree with you. Thank you you very much. Excellent.
Very quickly, Dimo, can you provide your answer?
No, I agree with Mina. Absolutely, it is a problem that very often gender policy as such is not very well specified, or is specified so broadly that having an actionable agenda based on it can be very difficult. It requires way too many collaborative stakeholders, and is generally a problem. And it's and when you reformulate it as for women and youth entrepreneurship, the lights come on and everyone says, oh, okay, fine, now we know what we're doing. And I agree with her take also on the IP part. I think it's a vastly overstated issue, and it needs to be looked not from a macro top down, but really from a bottom up perspective. Clearly, some companies will prefer to have non-disclosure. Some will go with general public licenses and open source. Others will have trademarks. Some will. There is a diversity of tools there, and quite a few of them are very not restrictive. But it is an overstated issue in my perspective, and from the people that I've talked to and the entrepreneurs that I have seen and met.
Thank you.
In my travels. Thank you.
Marco, you have a point to make?
Yeah, just very quickly. First, Dimo, thank you for this. Was a great presentation, and I actually think that has to be shared with everybody. Yeah. On the gender policy, I think it's extremely important, but I want to emphasize, because before, during my tenure at the Development Bank, we were financing business plans, And some of the business plans were focused on gender, just on gender, or on the, at that time, I remember the Millennium Development Goals, but it was not a business plan that made sense. So I think it's important that you have a good business plan with the financing mechanism, with the financing proposal, and then you can add this as an important component, the gender policy, the youth policy, the SDGs. Yeah, but it's not the reverse.
Okay, thank you very much.
Marco.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Dimo. Thank you, Fernando. And thank you, Nicolo. I just by way of closing and wrapping up, I would like to, I was supposed to talk about the main messages of the session, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually ask you, the participants, to give us the main messages. And I will ask Senmei to put the Mentimeter question. What is your key takeaway message from the session 3? The question is now in the chat. You can click on the chat and click on the question in the chat and please give us your answer. What is your key takeaway message from the session? Just a couple of words on session 3. What do you take up as key? Just mention a couple of words, if any. Okay, no, we click. Okay, well. Yes, now they're coming. Now they're coming. Money is not everything. I think that was one of the strong messages of the session, indeed, that a networking partnership, the ecosystem, and having a systems approach seems to be very important. Any other point you would, any other message that you picked up from the session? Yeah. A link between innovation, entrepreneurship, and SDGs could help in aligning and achieving their goals or objectives. Indeed, diversity, understanding better the relationship between entrepreneurship and innovation, and understanding the need for IP. Anything? It's STI is indispensable for entrepreneurship. We need to benchmark policies on data from practical working experiences. Thank you very much. Nothing on learning. I found one interesting point about the presentation on Chile was the learning dimension. Yeah, that's strengthening innovation ecosystem is important in development of innovation and industry. I think that has been a very strong message of this session, indeed. Came up in Marco's presentation, came up again in Nicolo's presentation. Innovation and entrepreneurship are the cores of SDA sustainable development. I'm sure that this audience would tend to agree with that, although not all audiences will probably agree with that point. Some others may think that other aspects of SDO. But no more comments. Okay. There's still about a good number of us remaining. Yeah. Oh, here we see. Can we go down? I cannot go. Yes, I think there's lots of lessons. There's lots of lessons that can be learned from the experience of Chile that are certainly applicable in other countries. I found one very important, one interesting aspect of the Chile experience was the use of foreigners. 74% of the projects in Startup Chile was foreigners, and by foreigners, and that for me was quite an eye-opening in the sense that they were attracting, not only they were trying to build their entrepreneurship capacity on the basis of attracting young startups from abroad rather than only using your internal capabilities. It's a very interesting. I would argue that perhaps in Africa you could also attract your diaspora. Have a huge diaspora in in Europe, in the US, and bringing it back as entrepreneurs. That could be a way forward for African STI policies and entrepreneurship. Okay. The research is as a source of entrepreneurship is also a key miss. Okay, and with all this point, just one last question, and the last question is about the interactivity of this event. This is a question for us. I would be very grateful if you can answer whether this question, how interactive this event has been. We're trying to develop this to make it as much as possible interactive. So and this is a question for us, for the organizers, that we need to know and to learn from you, from the participants and the audience. So please answer this question now. We're not it will take you a minute or so to answer. And just as you answer, I want to thank all of you for participating in this session. Tomorrow we will have a different aspect for discussion. We will move from designing policy instruments and the discussion around policy instruments to the discussion about the implementation. What are the implementation challenges? Why do we fail so much with implementation? We have excellent design, we have very good ideas, very good technical developments, but something goes wrong when we try to implement things. And tomorrow our discussion will be about that. What are the challenges regarding implementation, and what can we do to improve implementation in SDA policies? Please, before you go, just don't forget to answer our last question regarding also we have to, I've just been reminded that we need to have our group picture. So please, can you all connect your cameras? Connect your cameras, please, so we can have our group picture. Yes, please, can you all connect your cameras? We need your, for the group picture. Please. Great. This is, can you, more people connect their cameras? Good. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, fine. And we have our group picture now. Yes, you are very handsome and very good looking. So please connect your cameras. I'm only the one that doesn't. Okay, good, great. Enough. Okay. Now, do we have the picture? Do we have our pictures? Yes. Well done. Okay. Again, please don't forget to answer our last question. Thank you very much for participating in this session, and we hope to see all of you tomorrow. We have another interesting session tomorrow. As you can see, we're trying to discuss the practical aspects of SDI. And I'm sure that, and we will continue doing that tomorrow. So please get involved, come back tomorrow, and thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Professor Alcotto. Thank you with the
Thank
colleagues.
you. Thank you.
Thank you to
Thank
all
you.
the colleagues who presented in the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you everybody tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Same
Yes,
time.
Annalene.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Annalene.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lifa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Professor Alcotto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, little Joseph.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
He's introducing STEM at a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Tamai, how are you?
I'm good. You? Tomorrow,
I'm fine, man.
at what time are we starting tomorrow? Because we have another engagement.
Same time, 3 o'clock.
Oh, no
Okay,
problem. Because for technology
3
needs
to 5.
assessment, it's at 10 tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
3 to 5, same time, yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed the session. Did you enjoy the session?
It was very nice.
Nah, that's good. That's good. We're happy to hear that.
Yes,
That's
yes.
good. Yeah.
Yes.
Tomorrow
Rest
we
of us-
talk about. Tomorrow will be about implementation. So I think it's important to also attend tomorrow. It's about implementation.
Yeah, I think I have to. We'll have to attend it tomorrow.
Yeah.
With my
Yeah.
colleagues, I will have to attend with me. Thank you
Yes,
so
yes,
much.
yes.
Really, it's so inspiring. Yeah.
No, it's very interesting. Yeah, we are all learning. We are all learning.
It's so inspiring. Really. I think tomorrow
Yeah.
I'll attend again. At
Thanks,
3
Dr.
o'clock.
White. Thanks.
Thank you
See
so
you
much.
tomorrow at 3.
Bye bye.
Cheers,
Thank you
cheers.
so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.